Welcome to the deep dive. We've got something sitting on the desk today that is visually completely arresting.
Oh, absolutely. It's stunning.
Right. And before we even get into the mechanics of what we're talking about, I need to paint a picture of these source materials for you.
Please do, yeah, because they are not what you'd expect.
Exactly. We have these two documents. One is called the Arabic Alphabet Exploration and another titled Presentation 1. But honestly, calling them documents feels like a massive
It
disservice.
really does. They're more like art pieces.
Yeah. These pages are just saturated with atmosphere. There's a depiction of this intricate glowing lantern hanging right by a window, and through that window you see a twilight cityscape.
It's beautiful.
It is. A perfect crescent moon is suspended in a starry night sky.
It immediately sets a specific mood, doesn't it? It isn't just some clinical textbook diagram.
Not at all.
You turn the page, and there are these majestic mosques with sweeping domes bathed in moonlight.
Yeah.
And then right beside that, an image of a very delicate, ornate cup of traditional coffee resting on a table.
And flowing around all these images is this breathtaking golden calligraphy, specifically the phrase Astaghfirullah, which translates to I seek forgiveness from God.
The calligraphy is what really draws the eye for me.
Same. The swoops, the sharp angles.
The sheer intentionality of the ink.
Right, the intentionality. And that visual intentionality is actually the perfect gateway into our mission today because, we aren't here just to admire the art,
Yep.
and we aren't even here just to recite a list of letters. What these materials actually represent is a highly granular, almost microscopic anatomical exploration of the Arabic alphabet.
We are essentially looking at a biological blueprint.
Exactly.
The text frames the alphabet not as a collection of abstract symbols, but as a map of the human vocal tract.
A very detailed map.
It details how 29 individual letters, which the text refers to as the mufradat, are physically engineered.
Engineered is the right word, but I actually want to push back on the idea of a simple blueprint.
Oh, how so?
Well, a blueprint implies a static structure, right? Like a building. What we are looking at is more like a schematic for a highly dynamic, calibrated instrument.
Ah, I see what you mean. Yes.
We are taking the human mouth, the throat, the teeth, and looking at them as a piece of acoustic technology.
That's a great way to put it.
If you are someone who loves languages, or honestly, if you just appreciate uncovering the hidden, invisible structures in everyday things, this is going to fundamentally rewire how you think about the physical act of speaking.
You're going to start noticing exactly where your tongue is resting as you listen to this.
Which is an uncomfortable but necessary level of hyper-awareness for this topic.
Very true.
So to understand the baseline, we have to look at the raw numbers provided in the text.
Right, we have 29 mufradat, individual letters.
Yep.
But the fundamental architecture relies heavily on a specific ratio. Out of those 29, only 3 are vowels.
Leaving 26 consonants, which is a massive, overwhelming majority.
It really is.
And of course, the text notes the basic orientation of the writing system, right to left. But let's hover on that consonant-to-vowel ratio for a second.
Okay.
26 consonants to 3 vowels. When you look at that from an acoustic standpoint, it dictates a very specific physical experience for the speaker.
Because vowels and consonants are produced very differently.
Exactly. Vowels are essentially open air. You open your vocal tract, vibrate your vocal cords, and just let the sound out.
Unobstructed.
Right. But consonants are the opposite. They are collisions.
They're obstructions. A consonant is formed by creating a barrier, causing friction, or entirely blocking and releasing airflow at very specific points in the mouth or throat.
So an alphabet that is this heavily skewed toward consonants is demanding that the speaker become a master of manipulating physical barriers.
The language isn't just flowing freely, it is being actively sculpted and chopped and diverted by your internal musculature.
Which brings us to the core terminology in the source material. The text introduces the concept of the makhraj.
Yes, the plural being makaris.
The translation provided is fascinating. It defines a makhraj as the point of exit or the outlet.
I actually find that translation slightly limiting, to be honest.
Really? Why?
Well, point of exit makes it sound like a doorway the sound just walks through.
Ah, right. Like an open frame.
Exactly. But in the context of tajweed, which the text brings up as the science and discipline of proper pronunciation and beautification of recitation, the makhraj is described as the specific articulatory organ from where a letter is pronounced.
So it's much more active.
Yes, it's not just where the sound leaves, it's the exact geographic coordinate where the sound is physically manufactured.
I love that. So it's less like an open door and more like a specific valve in a complex piping system.
That is a perfect analogy.
You don't just open your mouth and hope the sound makes it out. You
Yeah.
have to route the air to a very specific valve, engage the right pressure, and release it.
And the text hits us with a number that is just staggering here. There are exactly 17 specific muckeries. 17 distinct articulatory outlets mapped across the mouth, lips, and throat.
Think about the density of that mapping for a second.
It's incredibly dense.
The vocal tract isn't that large. From the lips to the vocal cords, you are talking about, what, a few inches of biological real estate?
Yeah, barely a handful of inches.
To map 17 distinct, non-overlapping exit points within that confined space requires a level of anatomical precision that borders on the obsessive.
It turns the mouth into a 17-valve instrument.
It really does.
Yeah,
And we all walk around with the same basic equipment, right? Teeth, tongue, palate.
sure.
But we rarely think about utilizing it with that level of granularity.
Because in a lot of languages, you can be slightly lazy.
Definitely. I know I am.
You can slur a consonant, or your tongue can hit roughly the right area, and context carries the meaning. You don't have to be exact.
But a 17-valve system leaves very little margin for error.
Almost.
Nah.
None. If your tongue shifts a millimeter to the left or touches the root of a tooth instead of the edge, you haven't just mispronounced a sound.
What happens?
You've activated an entirely different valve. You've produced a different mufradad, and therefore you are speaking a different word.
Wow.
The neurological control required to navigate those 17 points at the speed of normal conversation is a massive cognitive and physical load.
That is wild. Let's actually test that physical load, starting from the very outside of the face and working our way in.
Okay, let's do it.
Because the rules governing the outside of the mouth, the lips, are incredibly strict. The text categorizes a set of letters as shafawiya.
Which relates directly to the discipline of the lips.
Right, and the overarching rule here is just wild to me. It states, only 4 letters are pronounced from the lips. Apart from these letters, do not let the lips move whilst pronouncing any other letter.
That rule alone completely upends how most people use their sense to communicate.
Totally.
The instruction to not let the lips move for 25 out of 29 letters is an exercise in intense muscular restraint.
Try doing that right now. Like, if you're listening, try speaking a full sentence in whatever language you normally speak, but consciously freeze your lips unless you are making a B, P, M, or W sound.
It is incredibly frustrating to even try.
It is. We use our lips constantly. We flare them, we round them to emphasize vowels, we pull them back.
Because our lips are essentially doing a secondary dance to help shape the sound, even when they aren't the primary articulators.
Right, they assist the main action.
We use them as an acoustic crutch. By rounding or flattening the lips, we change the overall shape of the resonant cavity of the mouth.
Which changes the sound wave.
Exactly. And that can help compensate for a slightly lazy tongue placement inside the mouth.
Ah, I see.
But the Sheffield rule eliminates that crutch entirely. By forcing the lips to remain perfectly still for non-lip letters, the system demands that all the acoustic shaping happens internally.
It guarantees a purity of sound.
Yes. The resonance is colored only by the specific internal makhraj, untainted by extraneous facial movements.
It's like ventriloquism.
It really is.
You are enforcing a complete stillness on the outside to maintain absolute control on the inside. Now, for the 4 letters that are allowed to use the lips, the text highlights 3 specific examples.
The letter ba, the letter meme, and the letter wow.
But it doesn't just say use your lips. It dives into the microanatomy of the lip tissue itself.
This is where the mapping gets truly microscopic.
Yeah, tell me about the ba.
For the letter ba, the source explicitly states it is pronounced from the wet part of both lips. It draws a comparison to the English B, as in the word bat.
The wet part versus the dry part.
Yes.
If you roll your lips slightly inward right now, you can feel that exact boundary line. You have the dry exterior skin of the lip and then the line where it transitions into the moist internal mucosa.
And the text points out that there's a totally different pronunciation that comes from the dry part of both lips.
Isolating the wet mucosa from the dry exterior skin is just a brilliant observation of physical acoustics.
Because the texture of the tissue fundamentally alters the friction and the release of the consonant.
Yes.
Well, the moist interior creates a subtle microscopic surface tension. When you press the wet parts of the lips together to form the ba, that moisture creates a slightly stickier seal than the dry skin would.
Ah, so when that seal breaks, you get a very specific acoustic pop, a sharpness to the consonant that you wouldn't get if you used the dry outer edges.
Exactly. Think of it like the difference between tapping two dry pieces of leather together versus two damp pieces of leather.
The acoustic timbre changes completely.
It does. And the fact that this phonetic system recognizes that tissue texture dictates sound quality and forces the speaker to consciously target the mucosa, it's a level of sensory awareness that is quite profound.
I really want you to think about that the next time you speak. Think about the wet and dry lines of your lips.
It's hard to unnotice it once you hear it.
It is. The amount of discipline it takes to freeze the lips entirely, and then when you finally are allowed to use them, you have to know exactly which millimeter of tissue is making contact. It's astonishing.
And that extreme control on the exterior is matched by a demand for extreme resonance on the interior.
Right, let's move inside.
The text categorizes another set of letters based entirely on their acoustic weight, grouping them under the term mustelia.
The heavy letters.
Yes.
The source identifies 7 mustelia letters: ka, sod, tad, gyn, to, kaf, and zo. And the cardinal rule for this group is that they are always pronounced with a thicker voice.
Thicker voice. It's an interesting attempt to describe a complex acoustic phenomenon in simple terms.
The text even provides a mnemonic combination to help memorize these 7, right?
It does. Kusa daden quids.
But physically producing a thicker sound isn't just about speaking louder or dropping your pitch, is it?
No, not at all. You can't just press a button on your neck to make your voice thick.
Right. So what is the actual physical mechanic the text is pointing toward here? How do you thicken a consonant?
Phonetically, this process often involves elevating the back or the root of the tongue toward the soft palate, while simultaneously expanding the pharyngeal cavity, which is the space in the back of your throat.
So you are manipulating your internal architecture to create a larger, darker echo chamber.
Yes. If you think about an acoustic guitar versus a cello,
Oh, I like that comparison.
the cello has a thicker, heavier sound because the resonant chamber is larger and shaped differently. By actively expanding the throat and raising the back of the tongue, you are changing the shape of your internal resonant chamber.
You are taking a standard consonant and infusing it with mass.
That's exactly it. He gives these 7 specific letters a very grounded, authoritative quality.
I just love the idea of infusing a consonant with mass. It creates this heavy, booming topography in the language.
It does. But the text doesn't let us stay in that heavy space for long.
No, it pivots immediately to the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, introducing us to the Sephiria letters.
To the whistling letters.
This is genuinely one of my favorite details in this entire deep dive. The text specifies 3 Sephiria letters: Za, Sin, and Sahad.
And the mechanical instructions for producing these letters are incredibly precise.
They are. The expert guide states that the tip of the tongue must touch the inner edges of both the top 2 and bottom 2 front teeth.
Let's break down that geometry for a second because it's highly unusual.
Yeah, please do.
The tip of your tongue isn't flat. It's a relatively blunt, muscular point.
Right.
To make contact with the inner edges of the top 2 incisors and the bottom 2 incisors simultaneously, you have to position the tongue directly behind the slight gap between the upper and lower teeth when the jaw is nearly closed.
So you are creating an impossibly narrow, highly pressurized corridor for the air to escape.
Exactly. You're using the sharp enamel edges of 4 distinct teeth to slice the airflow.
Slicing the airflow. And slicing airflow at high pressure through a narrow aperture is exactly how you generate a whistle.
The text describes the result perfectly as a whistle-like, high-pitched sound.
But the mechanics are only half of the equation here. The text provides an instruction regarding the duration of these Sephiria sounds that is, honestly, genuinely surprising.
The duration instruction changes everything.
It says the articulation of these whistling sounds should be prolonged for 3 to 5 seconds.
3 to 5 seconds. In the context of normal human speech, a consonant that lasts for 3 to 5 seconds is an absolute eternity.
Let's just hold a beat and count that out in our heads, just to feel it.
Good idea.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Imagine being in the middle of a sentence, hitting the letter seen, and sustaining that high-pitched hiss against your teeth for that long.
It stops being simple communication at that point and shifts into a form of breath control, almost like a musical performance.
It is a performance. To sustain a consistent high-pitched whistle for 5 seconds requires a steady, metered release of air from the lungs.
You can't just exhale naturally.
No, you'd run out of air instantly.
Yeah.
You have to actively push the air out at a controlled rate to maintain the acoustic frequency without dropping the pitch or running out of breath.
It adds this soaring, suspended musicality to the recitation.
The contrast is amazing.
It is. You have these dark, heavy mustalia letters dropping like anvils, and then you transition into a safaria letter, and suddenly the language is floating on this high-frequency whistle for 5 full seconds.
The dynamic range is massive. It proves that the mapping of this alphabet isn't just about utility. It's deeply concerned with the aesthetic and acoustic beauty of the human voice.
It's an acoustic choreography.
And as we move deeper into the mouth, that choreography requires the tongue to navigate an incredibly complex terrain.
Yes. The source text takes us into the microgeography of the teeth and the palate, starting with the Nitia letters.
Ka, dal, and to.
Now, the text gives us the exact coordinates for the makhraj here. It states that the tip of the tongue must touch the roots of the top 2 front teeth.
The roots. If you run your tongue up the back of your front teeth right now, you feel the hard, smooth enamel.
Doing it now. Yeah.
Right where that enamel ends, and you feel the soft, slightly ridged tissue of the gum line. That exact intersection is the root.
Okay.
That is the target point for the Nitiya.
It's a very specific, fleshy point of contact. But look at how quickly the geography shifts in the text. Right after defining the roots, it introduces the Lisuea letters.
Sa, Zal, and Zo.
For these 3 letters, the text says the tip of the tongue no longer touches the root, but instead touches the inner edges of the top front teeth.
The physical distance between the root of the tooth and the inner edge of the tooth is negligible.
What are we talking, like 1/4 of an inch?
Maybe 1/4 of an inch, perhaps less, depending on the person's anatomy. Yet moving the tip of the tongue, that fraction of an inch down the tooth, completely changes the category of the letter.
It changes the phonetic output, and therefore it changes the entire meaning of the word you were trying to say.
Exactly. If your tongue slides 1/4 inch too high and hits the gum line instead of the sharp edge of the enamel, you have completely misfired.
It requires the tongue to act as a highly sensitive tactile sensor.
It has to navigate blindly in the dark, wet cavern of the mouth and instantly differentiate between the texture of the gum line and the sharp edge of the incisor.
At conversation speed.
Yes.
And the map keeps moving backwards. After the teeth, the text brings us to the Shajaraya letters, Jim, Shin, and Ya.
Now we are abandoning the tip of the tongue entirely.
Right. The instruction here is that the middle part of the tongue must touch the middle part of the palate, the top of the mouth.
This represents a massive shift in muscular engagement from what we were just doing with the teeth.
How so?
You aren't pointing the tongue anymore. You're elevating the broad, flat, back middle section of the muscle and pressing it against the hard, domed roof of the mouth.
Ah, right. It creates a very wide, sweeping barrier compared to the pinpoint accuracy of the teeth.
Exactly. And the text includes that same duration instruction here too, a 3 to 5 second prolongation.
Yes. The source material actually gives us some visual callouts here, connecting these Shajuriya letters to example words depicted in that beautiful calligraphy we talked about at the start.
What were the words again?
It gives us words like Jannat, meaning heaven, Hajj, the pilgrimage, Masjid, the mosque, and Jinn, the hidden spirits.
Try to conceptualize holding the jim sound in the word Jannat,
Okay.
pressing the broad middle of your tongue against the roof of your mouth, and sustaining that resonant friction for 3 seconds before releasing the rest of the word.
Jannat. It gives the word this incredible physical weight. You aren't just saying the word heaven. You are physically dwelling in the consonant, feeling the vibration against the dome of your palate before the word even fully materializes.
It allows the meaning of the word to reverberate physically within the speaker's skull.
That is so poetic. And to complete our topographic map of the tongue, the outline points us to the tarfiya letters.
Right, the tarfiya.
We've used the tip of the tongue on the teeth. We've used the broad middle on the palate. For the tarfiya, the text says we use the edge of the tongue, specifically touching the gums of the top 4 front teeth.
The lateral edges.
Yes.
This forces you to flare the tongue outward, widening it to create a seal along a curved perimeter rather than a single point or a flat surface.
Looking at this entire sequence, from the nitiya to the tarfiya, we are literally looking at a topographic map.
We really are.
You have the peaks at the roots of the teeth, the sharp ridges at the inner edges, the broad plateaus of the hard palate, and the curving lateral borders of the gums.
Every single millimeter is categorized.
And every slight shift engages a different one of those 17 valves we talked about.
It highlights a level of biological engineering that we take completely for granted in our daily lives.
Definitely. When we chat with a friend, we don't think about jaw microadjustments or tongue flares.
But this system forces you to consciously drive the machinery.
And the machinery goes much deeper than the mouth. Moving into the deeper anatomy highlighted by the text, we have to talk about the throat, the Halkia letters.
The throat letters. Just as the text mapped the microscopic ridges of the teeth, it applies a similar zoning system to the throat itself.
I found this part so fascinating.
It divides the pharynx into three distinct operational zones: the top part, the middle part, and the bottom part.
Dividing the throat into thirds, I can confidently say I have never in my life thought about which specific third of my throat a sound is coming from.
Most people haven't, but the text is uncompromising on this.
It isolates the letters ein and ha and states unequivocally that they originate from the middle part of the throat.
To isolate the middle of the throat requires constricting the pharyngeal constrictor muscles.
The ones that wrap around the throat.
Yes, the muscles that literally wrap around the middle of your throat. Engaging them in isolation is incredibly rare in Western languages.
What kind of sound does it make?
It creates a very tight, squeezed, almost strained acoustic quality.
It's a very visceral sound.
Very visceral. And then the text moves up. It tells us the letters gain and ka originate from the top part of the throat.
And we have to combine this with a rule from earlier. Do you remember the mustalia? The heavy, thick letters?
Yes, gain and ka are part of that heavy group.
Exactly. So the text is telling us that not only do you have to isolate the very top of the throat, right where the uvula hangs down, but you also have to actively thicken the voice, expanding the acoustic chamber to make it sound dark and heavy.
You are engaging the friction at the top of the throat while dropping the root of the tongue to maximize the resonance. It's a dual action.
And finally, the text notes that there is another point of origin at the very bottom part of the throat, deep down near the larynx and the vocal cords.
What strikes me about this vertical mapping of the throat is how it massively expands the sheer acoustic range of the speaker.
How so? Think about other languages.
Well, think about languages that are primarily spoken in the front of the mouth, using the lips and the tip of the tongue. The sound is light, it's forward, but it lacks depth. It lacks a certain physical gravity.
Right, it doesn't resonate as deeply.
By forcing the speaker to utilize the entire vertical shaft of the throat, from the deep baseline near the vocal cords, through the tight squeeze of the middle pharynx, up to the heavy friction at the top, the Arabic alphabet forces you to pull sound up from the visceral depths of your anatomy.
It utilizes the entire human vocal instrument, top to bottom.
You are playing the full piano, not just the middle octave.
That's a beautiful way to put it. But out of all the 17 mockeries, out of all the wet lips and inner edges and heavy throat chambers we've explored today, there is one final detail in this text that absolutely stopped me in my tracks.
The aleph.
The aleph. It is just a single vertical stroke of ink on the page. But the way the text describes its makhraj, its point of exit, completely breaks the mold of everything else we've discussed.
It doesn't give a physical coordinate.
No. It doesn't say tongue to palate or throat constriction. The text simply states that the aleph originates from the emptiness of the mouth.
The emptiness of the mouth. It is a profound conceptual shift.
It really is. Up until this point, every single letter, every valve, has been defined by physical contact.
It has been defined by a barrier, a collision, a point of friction.
The wet lips pressing together, the tongue striking the enamel, the throat squeezing shut. Sound created by physical mass interacting with other physical mass.
But the aleph is defined by the absence of mass. It is defined by the void.
From a pure phonetic and physiological standpoint, what is the text actually describing here?
What the text is describing is unobstructed phonation. You are vibrating the vocal folds deep in the larynx, generating a raw sound wave.
Okay.
But instead of chopping that wave up with your tongue or teeth, you simply open your jaw, lay your tongue flat, and allow that sound wave to travel through the sheer, unobstructed, empty space of the oral cavity.
But the phrasing of it originates from the emptiness. It elevates it from simple phonation into something deeply philosophical.
It does. It frames the sound not as the vibration of the vocal cords, but as the deliberate shaping of the empty space itself.
It is the architecture of space.
It reminds me of the concept in art or architecture of negative space.
Oh, yeah.
The structure isn't just defined by the pillars and the walls. It is defined by the volume of empty air that those walls enclose.
It's like the silence between the notes in music being just as important as the notes themselves.
Exactly.
To have an anatomical, highly systemic, phonetic text that maps out the mouth millimeter by millimeter and then deliberately carve out a specific category for the emptiness, it acknowledges that the empty space inside of us is a vital, functioning part of the instrument.
The void itself is a point of origin.
It's a beautiful synthesis of physiology and poetry.
It really is.
Let's pull back and look at the entire map we've laid out today based on these sources.
It's been quite a journey.
We started with the realization that the mouth is a highly calibrated 17-valve machine.
We looked at the shafawiyya, the intense discipline required to keep the lips perfectly still like a ventriloquist.
Only utilizing them for 4 specific letters, and even then, knowing the exact boundary of the wet and dry tissue.
We examined the acoustic extremes, the mustaliya letters demanding a thick, resonant, timpani-like chamber in the back of the throat.
Contrasted with the Seyfuriya letters, where the tongue slices the air against 4 teeth to hold a high-pitched whistle for up to 5 full seconds.
We mapped the microscopic shifts of the tongue, realizing that missing the inner edge of a tooth by a fraction of an inch and hitting the root completely changes the letter.
We traveled down into the 3 distinct, isolated depths of the throat, and finally we arrived at the aleph, recognizing that the sheer emptiness of the mouth is in itself a source of phonetic power.
And this brings us to the core realization for anyone listening to this deep dive.
Which is?
Whether you are studying Arabic or just fascinated by human biology, understanding these mockeries isn't about memorizing trivia. It is about recognizing that true, precise spoken language is a masterful physical performance.
Every time someone speaks this language correctly, adhering to this ancient blueprint, they're executing a highly coordinated dance of anatomy.
They're demonstrating absolute conscious mastery over their own biology, down to the millimeter.
It makes you wonder how much we take the act of speaking for granted.
We treat it as an automatic function, like breathing or blinking. But these texts reveal that it can be a highly intentional, disciplined art form.
And that leads me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. Something to turn over in your mind long after we wrap up here.
Let's hear it.
We have seen just how demanding this phonetic system is. It requires you to consciously freeze your face. It requires you to hold a whistling breath for 5 seconds.
It forces you to map your thoughts to 17 distinct microscopic coordinates in your mouth and throat, all the way down to utilizing the absolute emptiness of the cavity itself.
So here's the question. How might that level of intense, conscious physical effort change the actual weight and meaning of the words you choose to speak?
If the physical act of forming a word requires that much focus, that much muscular discipline, that much air and energy.
Exactly. If you have to work that hard, with that much precise physical intention, just to construct a single word in the air, does it make you more careful about what you choose to say?
It's a profound thought.
Do the words carry more weight simply because of the immense physical labor required to birth them into the world? It is something to think about the next time you open your mouth to speak. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.